were released last weekend. Titled the Peirce Report, the study dealt with issues ranging from those pertaining to state and local government to economics, education, social isolation, cultural development, and urban growth. While the report has attracted positive attention, it has also received some measure of negative reaction. And joining me this evening to discuss the findings of the four-man research team and local reaction to its criticisms and recommendations is Neal Peirce. Mr. Peirce is the author of several books on topics ranging from state and municipal government. Okay. Good evening. I'm Michael Grant. A few months back, the Arizona Republic and Phoenix Gazette newspapers engaged the services of a team of 4 urban affairs specialists. Their task, according to the newspapers, was to use their knowledge of the nation's metropolitan areas to critically examine metropolitan Phoenix and identify strengths and weaknesses. The results of their research were released last weekend. Titled the Peirce Report, the study dealt with issues ranging from those pertaining to state and local government to economics, education, social isolation, cultural development, and urban growth. While the report has attracted positive attention, it has also received some measure of negative reaction. And joining me this evening to discuss the findings of the four-man research team and local reaction to its criticisms and recommendations is Neal Peirce. Mr. Peirce is the author of several books on topics ranging from state and municipal government to economic and urban development. He is also a specialist in urban and intergovernmental affairs reporting, and since 1975 has written a nationally syndicated column focusing on issues and trends in those and other areas of statewide and municipal public policy. In addition to Neal Peirce, there were 3 other members of the research team: Christopher Gates, a consultant for the National Civic League, an urban advocacy group based in New York; John Hall, the director of the School of Public Affairs at Arizona State University and contributor to the Urban Institute and Brookings Institution; and Curtis Johnson, executive director of the Citizens League, a private urban advocacy and research firm headquartered in Minneapolis, St. Paul. This evening's program is going to be devoted to a discussion of the report. But before we get to that, we have a brief review of the 7 principal findings and recommendations of the report.
To no one's surprise, the report found that growth drives the valley. But in the future, growth must be planned by collective decision-making to solve the problems created by the area's rapid growth. Power in the metropolitan area rests in the hands of developers, professional city bureaucrats, and state legislators. The solution is county home rule in a reorganized form of government. Even with the incredible growth of the valley, its future success is not guaranteed, since the area lacks corporate headquarters and is basically a branch town. A stronger educational system is the guarantee of future growth, and business must provide the impetus for better schools. The report wholeheartedly endorsed the proposed Rio Salado project, comparing its potential value to that of New York City's Central Park. Rio Salado could be the single focus the valley lacks, but should be largely financed by those who will benefit the most from it. Valley residents tend to isolate themselves, and the area lacks stability due to its transient nature. An emphasis on neighborhoods is the answer. a genesis to develop civic pride. Valley residents are selfish when it comes to supporting culture and social services. With quality of life a necessary draw for major corporations, philanthropic giving must be hurried along. Inner-city rivalries are harmful to the Valley. A metropolitan area needs a city center, and a spirit of cooperation needs to be fostered between Phoenix and the surrounding municipalities.
Neal, an interesting report. I enjoyed reading about it behind my walls in my patio Sunday morning after racquetball. Before we talk about the report itself, outline for us briefly the methodology that the four-man team went through in terms of gathering data on the report.
Well, the four of us decided to go ahead with the project late last fall, and we met once in New York and once in Kansas City, wherever we could get together, and decided on the methodology, how we wanted to go ahead. We were given a long list of proposed interviewees by the newspapers, and then we consulted with our own sources and contacts and added quite a few to those, decided on a final list of people we'd like to see. They were invited. And then we spent 2 weekends and a full week, I would say, in Phoenix and the region in early December. Took a big helicopter ride over the region to get a bird's eye view. And then we interviewed about 65 people during the week, wall-to-wall interviews all day long and sometimes through the evenings. When that was finished, we spent 1 or 2 days digesting our findings, deciding what type of articles we would like to write, what the focus of each one would be. Then it was my job to go write the articles, then I sent them out for commentary and approval by my colleagues, and they were printed. That's it.
Okay, all right, gotcha. You're very familiar with the urban environment. Is this report on Phoenix a lot different than a report would be on another western city that's fairly young, has had the kind of explosive growth that Phoenix has had, rests in the Sun Belt? I mean, all the criteria. Is Phoenix unique from that standpoint, or are we suffering through a lot of the same problems that you might find indigenous to the West in the Sun Belt?
I think there's some problems that are quite similar when you have, a lot of population moving in rapidly, some population moving out at the same time. You seem to be fairly high on both moving in and moving out. Right. Where you get what people call social isolation or difficulty, getting really reestablished in the new place that you've gone to, and low voter turnout, sprawl development, and so on. I would say offhand that Phoenix perhaps is the most extreme version of the western fast growth city that you could find.
Okay. You made it interesting. I caught a little bit this morning. You were on the Pat McMahon talk show on KTAR. You made an interesting comment about it was about getting bold, the city of Phoenix getting bold and doing some bold, innovative things. And you said that you didn't find that in talking to a lot of the people out here, in contrast to what you might have heard in other municipalities.
That's true. Even as opposed to other western cities, if you talk to the movers and shakers in a Dallas or a San Diego or a number of other cities, Austin, Texas, they'll explain to you how they're making things happening and what they're doing. Here, the movers and shakers tend to tell you why they can't get things done. And I think the reason for that is the very split political nature of the valley, its large physical size, and a culture that is based so much on physical growth, the development process, that somehow no one ever slowed down to say, hey, how do we pull together these pieces and make common decisions?
Now, one of the ways you suggested for pulling together the pieces was home rule for Maricopa County. But given now the historical fact of these competing municipalities inside Maricopa County, would that really do it for us, and why? If obviously you think it would.
Well, first of all, I think there should be home rule by definition for most people, most places. That's American democracy. It means you can vote for people who make decisions that are appropriate to the area you live in. These 18 or 20 cities, depending on how you count them, are just parts of a large valley. If you look at it from the sky, it's all one. And the problems of air quality, land use, transportation, they don't stop at one boundary. When you leave Tempe and go to Phoenix and go to Chandler and go to Mesa, they all continue. Sure. If those problems are then common, a lot of them, there's now no way that they can be addressed by a government where there's a there. Gertrude Stein once wrote about Oakland a little cruelly. I thought there's no there. There's no there.
I've been to Oakland. I don't think that was cruel.
Well, no, actually, Oakland has some nice revival going on downtown, but still a tough time. At any rate, if you want to make a common decision in the Valley, you have a county government which is very weak, which is sort of on the model of territorial days, which has all these row officers. I mean, it's one of the most archaic forms of government I've ever seen for a metropolitan area. It has a board of supervisors that rotates the chairmanship every year, which assures political neuters in a sense, and sort of independent duchies of where the individual districts go. And it does not, it's governed by the legislature, which holds every string and requires everything down to the rag content of the paper they use for their official documents. So there's really no power to do anything except what the legislature specifically says to do. If there were an atomic explosion in the Valley tomorrow, the county government presumably would be powerless to do a damn thing about it.
Your assignment was analysis, not necessarily implementation, but you've got a feel of this thing right now. Given the kind, that was another aspect of the report, the rivalries between the cities. You really think those cities would ever surrender, I think, the kind of decision-making power to a larger governmental authority that I believe you're describing?
Their citizens would. Yeah. It's the politicians who don't want to.
Right.
The poll done by the Arizona Republican Gazette show a solid majority in favor of home rule. It is a simple question of popular democracy. Power is being wielded now, as it was said in the introduction, by the development community, which is accustomed to having its own way. It's been the name of growth in the Valley. Someone said today that the development community has been to the Valley what General Motors was to Detroit. But that's been dominant, and it's been very hard to fight it, as you know. And when they start to have political battles against it, it's been difficult. And then by the professional bureaucrats, good city managers on the whole, hired by these individual city governments, and by state legislators. But there's no way you can focus in, as voters in the Valley now, and affect a government which has some powers over the broad area-wide concerns that this area has.
On this question of land planning and urban infill and those aspects of the report that the report went to, is there a model around here? Is there someone who has done it well, in your opinion, that Phoenix could rip 2 or 3 or 9 chapters out of their book?
Well, maybe not 2 or 3, but 1 or 2. San Diego, for example, when Pete Wilson was the mayor during the 1970s, now U.S. Senator, Republican Senator, put in some real restraints on the degree of where you could put physical growth, put some areas off limits, kept natural preserves and things of that nature, and it tended to channel growth to where there was a decision it was appropriate to have it. And at that point, a great deal of attention and planning was put into the downtown, which had deteriorated badly. And now that downtown is doing very well. You know, in civic life, it takes a long while. You don't make a decision today and implement it tomorrow.
Sure.
And so a city like that has made decisions about the revival of its downtown with its Horton Plaza, which has 3 or 4 major department stores in it, and a great piece of urban architecture. The older area of the city revived and so on. I mean, there's a ways to go, but I think they've made splendid progress. You can have a great city within a Sun Belt context. It's not necessary to have just 1 or 2 or 5 or 6 high-rise buildings sticking up and say that's your city with vast wastelands in between, which frankly is what a lot of downtown Phoenix is today.
Does the urban village concept work a little bit at odds, though, with what you're describing? Because I've heard it said that the urban village concept, as ideal as it may be given a present sprawl situation, may in and of itself encourage more urban sprawl.
Well, to the degree that you allow really heavy concentrations of high-rise development out of the cores of those villages, the villages in that sense become another developer's dream.
Yeah, right.
Because they're going to sap some of the growth that might go into the core.
One of the things I think you were driving at in the report is that perhaps Phoenix has run out its natural string on growth, in that the cheap land, the inexpensive labor, those kinds of things that may have driven the growth up to this point may no longer be there. Have we completely run out the string? Or?
Oh, you could continue. I mean, you go beyond the West Tank Mountains. You could go anywhere you want to, out across the desert. I mean, until you reach the borders of California, New Mexico, and the Grand Canyon, I suppose.
Right.
But the point is that in the modern economy, that may not be as efficient a form of growth as you used to have. You get long automobile commutes. You get higher and higher public expenses as you allow leapfrog development further and further out, because utility ratepayers and taxpayers get to pay for all of that.
Yeah.
In the meantime, you have these huge empty gaps in downtown and in the other cities. I mean, I just find it incredible to see how much is unbuilt upon. Whereas if you look at one city like Scottsdale, from the air, it doesn't have nearly that amount of emptiness in it, because they're doing more, I think, real planning of how they develop their city.
Phoenix Metro doomed to be a branch town as opposed to the corporate headquarters?
Well, for a while. You will not begin to get major corporate headquarters here until you build a quality of life that is going to make corporate executives want to be here. Even if you were to develop, which is the natural way to get headquarters is not to recruit them from outside as a rule, but to grow them inside, grow your own.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's fine, and there's a chance to do it. It's going to take a period of time. But unless you have quality of life that makes corporate executives think that it's a great place to be in Phoenix, you're going to be in trouble. There was an ASU study indicating that a number of corporate types would think of moving again, who've moved here in the last few years, because they don't find the education at the level that they expect, and don't find air quality where they want it, et cetera, et cetera. Those are problems that are going to prevent it. Also, you have a very strong competition within this region of the country. Los Angeles is an incredible mecca for sort of a command and control center of the modern urban world. The Texas cities are going to try for the same. Denver to the north. And it would take a lot of effort to make Phoenix a major headquarters city in the short term. I don't think that needs, you can think that you'd like to, but the more and more you can develop, as you're doing okay with, your ingrown, your home companies,
yeah, sure,
home development, the better you will do. But then you have to make sure that those corporations begin to see that they are major corporate citizens, and that you can't just sit there and reap the benefits of the society. You have to be there giving, taking part in all sorts of philanthropic efforts and all sorts of strategic planning for the region, thinking about its educational future, thinking about its environment. It's that culture that is not developed very far here, which is way behind your competitors, I think mostly around the Sun Belt.
Yeah, it seemed to me that that aspect of the report really sort of neatly tied together a whole lot of these different elements, including quality of education. And unfortunately, as you probably read on the front page of the newspaper this morning, Secretary Bennett released some statistics which I'm sad to say probably support the conclusions which you drew about our local school system. Yeah.
I'm sorry to see for your state's sake, but I must say the timing was fine coming to town. At least it was clear that we weren't.
Did you slip him $5 under the table? What about though? Here's the basic debate. Perhaps you got a feel for this, maybe not. But our problem isn't spending dollars on education. It's whether or not we're getting good bang for the buck out of our education dollar. And our problem is we're spending insufficient dollars on education. Did you get a feel for which one of those two ends of the spectrum is closer to the truth? I
think both are absolutely true. You cannot expect to spend at the 40-somethingth among the states of the United States and get a good school system. That just isn't going to happen. On the other hand, spending is not everything. And one of the points we made in one of the articles is that it's absolutely critical that there be an intervention, active, friendly, proactive intervention in the school and education system by non-educators. Mm-hmm. Educators tend to be, I'm reluctant to say here in the midst of a university setting, but they tend to be their own world, and they set up their own rules and regulations. And it is true, as some of the Republican conservative senators in this state say, that you get a large administrative mechanism, and that tends to grow and sometimes take some of the resources that might go into classrooms. We need in this country very much to have business groups, citizen groups, active in questioning how the schools are growing, how they're developing, which schools are really doing so well you can lift a lot of state constraints over them, which schools are doing so poorly that you need to put them in receivership, as the National Governors Association has suggested for the really crappy schools. When you get a school that bad, you're cheating kids and you're creating incredible problems for your own society in future years.
You know, it's probable that one of the other areas of the report, you talked about the isolation phenomenon, probably contributes to that. I mean, if a person is indeed going to lock themselves in their backyard on a Sunday afternoon and not know who their neighbors are, they probably are not as inclined also to get involved in their local school district.
I think that's true. I'd like to, now that you've mentioned it, pick up on that, of course. While on the one hand we talked about county home rule, which seems to be from above down in terms of what the structure would be, we said equally as important is a strong neighborhood life coming from the bottom up. These are the sinews of a strong society where people know each other, where they're connected. It's not unimportant that people have block clubs and block watches for crime. It's not unimportant that they get together for all sorts of other social activities. That is going to cut down not only on isolation, but on some degree on mental illness, on suicide, on alcoholism, all the other things. When you have a lot of people who moved here, they need support mechanisms.
Yeah, that's right.
Horizontal, right where they live.
Because an awful lot of them have abandoned those kinds of support structures moving out here.
That's right.
But how do you do anything about that? Now you're just talking about...
Yeah, we made a couple suggestions in the report. We suggested a civic welcome wagon, nothing commercial allowed, but when you move into a neighborhood, it needs to be supported by the city involved and by the civic groups there. Someone comes or 2 or 3 people come and greet you and give you a full briefing on what all the civic activities are and the clubs that exist. Also that neighborhood, if it has a neighborhood organization, it should have one as soon as possible after it gets going, that neighborhood have a way to give feedback to the city hall and be consulted on growth policies, on investments, infrastructure that's going to be built, on where new developments still are going to come. That gives then neighborhoods a sense that they're effectual, and if people know in the long run that their neighborhood organization has a voice and is listened to, they're going to be more interested in joining.
I have heard the opinion expressed strongly, though, that the reason why a whole lot of people moved out here from the Midwest metropolis, the eastern metropolises and those kinds of things, is to get some space. And they don't only mean that in terms of physical space. They also mean it in mental space, and they're tired of being jammed into the subway trains and that kind of thing. Do you sense that a little bit? Are we fighting,
yes. There's a lot of when you ask people what's positive about the valley, it's in negatives what it is not. Being
left alone,
yeah.
Greta Garbo.
Well, I don't want to put it quite that extremely, but you know, the ideal is to be alone, have your privacy, or else to sit beside on a winter day some beautiful swimming pool and have some beautiful girl walk towards you, or a guy with his Coors beer offer. I mean, whatever it might be, right. This sort of romantic resort life. The romantic resort life doesn't work out for everybody, though. There's sort of a bitter backlash. Plus, you have a substantial Hispanic and some black population, a lot of which is not enjoying all of that. So this is a society that has a lot of homework to do. And I don't think these people, because they don't want to hang on subway straps in New York City, necessarily want to have no neighbors and not talk to them in the Valley of the Sun. The polls that the Republican Gazette did showed people are really interested in having those contacts. And I think that a sort of a conscious policy out of the cities, out of the neighborhoods, to bring people into more activity would find a lot of takers.
You liked Rio Salado. You liked the Rio Salado concept quite a bit. Is that maybe one area that there's some boldness
Yeah, well, it is a bold concept, goodness knows. $1 billion or more over 25 years to implement. Right. The idea of having a major public facility which everybody shares in, which is sort of a symbol of the valley, which is a place people can go to for recreation and so on, taking an ugly, really ugly scar that goes through the middle of this valley and turning it into a kind of an oasis and a place that people like to come to. But I want to stress a couple of things we said about Rio Salado. One was that if it looks like a developer's ripoff, it not only will fail, but probably deserves to. There's immense suspicion about developers. Maybe right or wrong, but the polls that the papers did and earlier public opinion polling shows that. Yeah. And too much Rio Salado has been sold, I think, over the last couple of years, or 3 or 4 years, as a thing to create development value. Mm-hmm. People don't want to be taxed to help developers earn more money. So I think there needs to be some real control as to who benefits and whether those who benefit will pay a good fair share of the cost of it it's developed by tax increment financing or by special assessments or what have you. Secondly, that Rio Salado should not be designed as its master plan is by a bunch of very bright city planners, but should be brought back to the people and made a people's project with a lot of citizen participation. That's why we suggested a citizens advisory committee that would be there sort of as a watchdog to blow the whistle if it appears that a lot of money is being made privately off this big public investment, and also to take part in the planning piece by piece to decide how much it's going to be big lakes and greenery and how much it will have more of a more modest desert look to it, how it ties into the nearby neighborhoods, because as brilliant as the planners' ideas are, people don't buy into that and they're going to stay suspicious of it. What you need in this valley is something where people buy in, and ideally, if Rio Salado is developed that way, then it becomes a way that neighborhood leadership develops, and on some of the bigger issues, that area-wide leadership develops, and it could be a terrific civic process as the way it was evolved, which is what cities are all about. It's how people work together and make things happen, as well as just a pretty green stripe, like Indian Bend Wash, in this case, going through a much larger stretch of the valley.
Nice to fly over, though, if it looked that way. Speaking of not buying into concepts, a whole lot of people have not bought into the concept of Phoenix downtown redevelopment. That's been discussed in the valley ever since I came here. Why is Phoenix downtown not a downtown?
Well, we heard some of the reasons explained to us. One which I thought was intriguing was that most downtowns were founded around railways and got going early enough so that they became, in effect, the metropolis, the downtown around a railway station, and that Phoenix was so young that it grew up in, really after World War II, except for very slight growth, during the truck era when things weren't centralized as much anymore. So there never was as much of a downtown Phoenix as there was a downtown Dallas or a downtown Houston or what have you. But I think that's only part of the explanation. The other part is that this valley was so big, there were so many other communities people could move out to. The development community found it easier to go out further and further without paying much attention to the downtown. Somehow what had been of a downtown was so small that it blew away, the stores withdrew. I have to tell you, you look at the downtowns across the Sun Belt, this is the most pathetic in terms of really substantial representation. And I don't mean just high-rise buildings. I mean a city that has everything. A city is not just high-rise buildings. A city is a place where you can walk and have fun. A city should be a meeting place for all the people of a metropolitan area. It should have great restaurants. It should have culture. It should have some fun to it, some vitality and spark to it. Sure. Now, Phoenix has a few things been trying, but boy, it's been a struggle. And until that is won somehow more, you're always going to have sort of a faint shadow of what was a city, and you need a full program of things to help it become a really important center.
Is the damage done, though? Might it be best? I mean, certainly you never want to write off a whole area of the city, and I'm not suggesting we do that. But, are we trying to force the round peg into the square hole? Might it be better to go looking to, I don't know, 24th Street and Camelback, Uptown?
Well, of course, there was this immense error when the Up Central Avenue, that development began some years ago, running away from the downtown. It was sort of a suburb within the downtown. Now the new Downtown Alliance view is it's going to be downtown plus the spine going north up towards Camelback and so on. Right. And then I heard Terry Goddard say it will be 75 years before we flesh all this out. It's going to take a long, long while. Barry Goldwater himself wrote a letter to one of the local magazines saying this might have to become one of the largest cities of the world till all this space in between gets filled. But still, I think the Goddard administration has a lot of very fine projects that it's trying to push forward. There's $1 billion now planned in terms of downtown development. And to those cities around the valley that say, we don't need a downtown Phoenix, let me assure you, people are not going to fly from Chicago or Seattle or San Francisco or Atlanta to the East Valley or to downtown Chandler. You need to have, every great city of the world has some center that becomes its representation to the world and also becomes sort of its control and command center in its own mini way of what is the center of that civilization. And as long as you don't have that, it will always look like a little bit of a backward civilization here. And one of the development-oriented bankers we talked to said this is just going to be like Orange County, but Orange County we've got to remember, is really a satellite of Los Angeles, and look how Los Angeles has been growing recently.
Neal Peirce, interesting report and a very interesting individual. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
The Peirce Report is not the first comprehensive analysis of what is right and what is wrong with metropolitan Phoenix. In 1979, Dr. Paul Bracken, professor of public policy at Yale University, authored the decidedly upbeat Arizona Tomorrow study. Written in conjunction with futurist Herman Kahn, the Arizona Tomorrow Report focused on many of the same kinds of issues raised by Mr. Peirce and his associates and looked ahead to Arizona in the year 2012. And on Monday and Tuesday, March 9th and 10th, Dr. Bracken will be my guest to continue our discussion of the various public policy issues reviewed this evening. That is March 9th and 10th. Coming up tomorrow, my guest will be Arizona Senator Dennis DeConcini. Thank you very much for being here this evening. I'm Michael Grant. Have a terrific one. Good night.
If you have comments regarding this evening's Horizon program, send them to Horizon, Channel 8 Television, Arizona State University, Tempe 85287.